The film opens with Mina running through the woods. She falls down a hole and ends up in a magical type of forest. It turns out she is part of a musical production of Alice in Wonderland, where she Johnny Rosita. And going to a performing Let's Get Crazy. Buster is keeping an eye out for a talent scout, Sookie, as she's one of the top scouts in the business. And he hopes that she can catapult them to the big leagues. However, Mrs. Crawley spots that Sookie is leaving before the second act. Buster chases after her. And she tells him that while the show is good enough for local theater, he and his cast don't have what it takes to make it big. Buster refuses to take no for an answer and chases after Sookie in her taxi. She lets him know that her boss is holding auditions in Redshore City. But she has the driver shake Buster off and he crashes into the river. Buster returns to the theater feeling dejected. He talks to Nana Noodleman, who encourages him to not let negative criticism get him down if he faith in himself and his cat. Buster later goes to a concert venue where Ash is performing. Heads will roll. She is happy to see Buster, but then finds that the club manager shorted her on her payment based on what he thinks the performers deserve. Ash says she won't let guys like that dictate her worth, so she joins Buster. Buster gathers the gang to take a bus to Redshore City. But Johnny and Mina express doubts in themselves because of what Sookie said. The bus nearly leaves without them. But Rosita stops the bus and convinces the gang to head out. Since performing in Redshore, the city has been a childhood dream of her. Also, she got Norman to babysit the piglets for 24 hours. And she is not going to pass up that opportunity. The gang arrives in Redshore City, a Vegas-like city of dreams and amazement. They arrive at Crystal Entertainment. But the lady at the front desk snobbishly tells them they can't go in because they didn't book an appointment. Not wanting to just give up, Buster sneaks the gang to the employee's closet and dresses them up as janitor, so they can sneak into the main room. Backstage, they watch as hotshot entertainment mogul Jimmy Crystal watches the act and appears disappointed with all of them. Before Buster and his gang have a second to perform, Jimmy shuts them down quickly. However, Gunter catches his attention when he improvises an idea for a sci-fi musical called Out of This World, featuring legendary rock star Clay Calloway. Jimmy is hooked to the idea, with the gang further convincing him by singing Where the Streets Have No Name. Jimmy loves the idea and gives Buster 3 weeks to put the show together, or he will throw Buster off the roof. And he's not kidding. Sookie spots Buster and is surprised to see him, but she warns him that he doesn't know what he's getting into. Buster scrambles to get a crew or even an idea for how to put on the show. Gunter helps come up with the basic plot line for the show, even though he doesn't have an ending in mind. With time running out, Buster sends Mrs. Crawley to find Calloway and bring him to the show. He sets up Rosita to be the star of the show, with Johnny to perform a dance number, and for Ash to do a duet with Calloway. However, Mina brings up to Buster that she has a romance scene written for her, and she is nervous because she has never had a boyfriend. Buster hires big-time actor Darius to be Mina's partner, but he is full of himself and doesn't even bother to remember Mina's name. Mrs. Crawley drives to Calloway's home, which is on private property and has a sign to warn trespassers to leave. When she approaches, Calloway rides a motorcycle near her and fires a paintball gun at her, frightening her into running away and causing her to drop her eye. Buster sets Johnny up to get dance lessons from the top dance instructor in town. Class kick and clobber. Johnny does his best, but is brought down because Klaus is such a jerk. Meanwhile, Buster tries to get Rosita to try out her part as the lead, but she faints when she realizes she has to do a bungee jump. Jimmy brings his ditzy daughter Portia to come check the set out, since she is a fan of Calloway, or at least whatever is vintage. After Rosita fails, Portia grabs the harness and does the jump herself, impressing others and convincing Jimmy to let her be in the show. The only problem is, Portia is a terrible actress, while Mina does a practice run with Darius. She goes outside when she is feeling brought down by his egotistical behavior. She meets another elephant named Alfonso, who runs an ice cream business with treats he makes himself. He sees how she is dressed and refers to her as a goddess. Giving her free ice cream as well. Mina is immediately smitten by him. But, full of herself by walking into the door and splattering the ice cream on herself. Mrs. Crawley returns to Buster in a panic state after her encounter with Calloway. Buster is then called to Jimmy's office, where he is enraged to learn that his guy spoke to Calloway's lawyer and learned that he doesn't even know Buster. The only reason that he is allowing the show to continue is because Portia is in it. Buster promises to fix things, and he tells the others that he is going to Calloway's home on his own, but Ash chooses to join him. Buster and Ash drive to Calloway's home, where he tells them to go away. They attempt to climb the fence against his warnings, but the two get electrocuted and knocked unconscious. When Buster wakes up, he hears that Calloway has already declined to join the show since he hasn't performed in over 0.15 years after the death of his wife, Ruby. He orders Buster to leave, but Ash says she will stay because she thinks she needs a little more time to get through to Calloway. Ash stays to play some music for Calloway, and he sits to listen. Johnny tries to work on his dance skills when he spots a street performer named Nushi. He asks her to sit down and chat so that she can help him work on his moves. He proves his talent by belting out "There's nothing holding me back" in front of the whole cafe. And now she agrees to help. She meets with Klaus, who is not happy that Johnny went behind his back to get extra help. But Nushi proves to be an encouraging teacher to Johnny. He gets good enough that Klaus clearly starts to feel threatened. Buster watches Rosita and Porsche perform the show, but he cannot deal with Portia's bad acting anymore. He tries to get her to agree to switch roles with Rosita, but Portia takes this as Buster firing her. Jimmy calls Buster into his office, but Ash calls Buster first and lets him know that Calloway has agreed to join the show. When Buster goes into Jimmy's office, he is furious when he believes he fired Portia. It brings him close enough to actually attempt to throw Buster off the roof. He only stops because he is called to do an interview where he tells the interviewer that he is shutting down the show and that Buster and his cast are second-rate. He locks Buster in his office, but Sookie gets him out and tells him to leave the city for good, or Jimmy really will kill him. Buster warns Mrs. Crawley and the rest of the gang to leave to hotel before Jimmy finds them. The gang seems ready to leave for good, but when Johnny offhandedly jokes about putting on the show behind Jimmy's back, that's exactly what Buster decides to do. The gang escapes from Jimmy's security after he learns Buster broke free. He rounds up the night crew to help set the stage, and Johnny calls his father Big Daddy to bring his guys to handle security and keep Jimmy away, along with the piglets disrupting security and keeping them busy. Buster makes a big announcement across the city to bring guests in, saying it's a free show and promising Calloway's appearance. They have a nearly packed audience coming in. Buster has Mrs. Crawley convinced Portia to come back as an alien character, and Me now becomes nervous when she sees Alfonso sitting in the front row. Jimmy's assistant Jerry alerts him about the show happening, and he gets his entourage ready to head to the theater. The show starts with Rosita assuming the role of the star, traveling to distant planets in search of a missing explorer played by Calloway. She first ends up on the planet of War, where Johnny plays the warrior, singing "A Sky Full of Stars." Klaus becomes envious of Johnny's newfound talent, and he takes the role of Johnny's opponent from his other partner, Ryan. Klaus battles Johnny and knocks him down, telling him he will never be great. Johnny finds the courage within him and performs the moves Nushi showed him to perfection, bringing Claus down and getting him to bow down to him. Jimmy and his gang make it to the theater, but Big Daddy and his guys do their best to hold him back. Rosita's character then ends up on the planet of Joy, where Portia plays the alien, singing "Could Have Been Me." Even though Jimmy is angry at her, she defiantly continues to perform in front of him. Jimmy tries to stop the show, but Buster traps him under the stage. The next scene has Mina acting out her scene with Darius. She envisions Alfonso as her partner, them singing "I Say a Little Prayer" together, and the crowd cheers for the two of them. Unfortunately, Jerry comes to break Jimmy out. Rosita is set to perform her bait jump scene with Gunter, but Jimmy catches up to Buster and attempts to throw him from a great height down into the vortex. where Rosita is said to make her big jump. Rosita overcomes her fear and catches Buster, throwing him to safety and managing to perform her big scene with Gunter to break free. The climax of the show happens as Ash is set to perform her duet with Calloway. But he suddenly feels like he just made a mistake and isn't ready, even though Ash encourages him. She walks up alone and starts to perform. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And Calloway feels Ruby's spirit next to him, giving him the strength to join Ash. And the crowd goes wild. The show proves to be a big hit, but Jimmy tries to take credit for it. When he tries to credit Buster Calloway and the gang, he turns around to find they all walked out on him, leaving him humiliated. Sookie then has Jimmy arrested for trying to kill Buster. The audience gives Buster and the gang a standing ovation. The gang starts to make their way out of the city, with Porsche joining them. Sookie then run. It's up to catch up with the bus, to tell the gang that the Majestic Theater wants them to form out of this world for a long-term gig. Buster asks Calloway if he is up for it, and he agrees. The show later debuts at the theater, and Buster watches with Nana in amazement as it debuts to a huge audience.